Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a GeekVerse Retrospective. I am the little Travis Snail, and I'm joined by...
I am Mr. Fantastic, Kirklin Patzer.
I am the stop motion Dylan Muss.
I am the cuss Taylor Field.
Kirkland, did you think that you were going to have Mr. Fantastic in the bag, or were you worried that someone else was going to take it from you when you were booting that name up today?
I wasn't really worried because I wasn't really planning on it. I just kind of joined the room, and I'm like, oh, I still have 20-Minute Man. That's not me. So then I changed it.
It's true. That's true.
It was only Taylor I was really competing with, and I was technically in the StreamYard room before him. I know he
Right.
popped in the actual
don't know
video
about that.
beforehand, but I heard more words than he has had. So yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing a retrospective for Mr. Oh God, I always screw this. Fantastic Mr. Fox. Now you might be
Doesn't
asking,
help with my name. It's confusing you. You're gonna look
Yeah.
at it and be like, "Oh, that's the movie."
You might be asking, are you doing a George Clooney retro, or is there a Fantastic Mr. Fox 2, or what's going? Is it a Wes Anderson retro? Why is this happening? Well, I'm going to jump to usually what we do at the end of the plug. This is on Patreon off, so you can support us and get all this good jazz, everything like that. But at the very top tier, the Patreon producer, which is the Phase 4 tier, when you join that, you get every single benefit we have, and also as like a nice little give back, you get to pick a movie that we've never retrospective before. Usually what we ask people is just something we haven't done on the podcast before and something not a part of a franchise. And we've had some good ones, we've had some bad ones. What's today going to be? We're not sure. But Josh Wright, a big thank you for being a Patreon producer for now multiple months. And, you know, I said, hey, because I think you joined in May, I said, hey, we got a really stacked schedule, but we're going to do around summer. So, absolutely doesn't matter. Just get to it whenever you can. And yeah, so that's what you can do in the future. But Joshua, a big thank you to supporting the podcast. And I hope you enjoy this review. I don't know what it's going to be like, so I'm just telling you now. I hope it's good. But yeah, links are down below. Audio, video, Discord, where they can find our separate feeds, podcast network feeds, the schedule, Manscaped, use the podcast code GVPOD, 20% off free worldwide shipping. Taylor Field, where can they find that when we post out episodes?
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find us with your internet connection in the search bar. GeekVerse.ca is our home base. GeekVerse our Twitter. GeekVerse on our Facebook.
Yes, so I'm going to go around the room here, and I'm going to start with you, Taylor Field. Of one, have you ever seen Fantastic Mr. Fox? And if you have, tell us your experience, and obviously if you haven't, whatnot. And another one to put a little wrinkle in, because I don't think this is going to be... I'm curious where you guys are. Have you seen many, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot, so maybe pull up IMDb, but have you seen many Wes Anderson films in the past? Because he's a very celebrated director, has a lot of critical praise, a lot of awards. He's kind of a big staple of our generation. So Taylor, had you seen Fantastic Mr. Fox, and are you familiar with anything Wes Anderson's work before?
Mr. Anderson.
Not that one.
Mr. Anderson. I mean, technically he is a Mr. Anderson, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong, but he's not the Mr. Anderson, you know.
That's fair.
I'm looking at his other
Because
thing.
the reason I'm posing this question is because we've never reviewed a Wes Anderson movie on the podcast before, so it's never really come up. I think that he's had one movie since the podcast is going. I know Grand Budapest was around just before startup, but I think he's had one or two.
I guess Isle of Dog.
Right. I remember we talked
More
about that
than
with
one dog.
Briggs. We talked about that with Briggs back in the day because he was a fan of the animation style. But Taylor, you ready?
None of his other projects look like... It doesn't look like I've seen any of them before, so this would be the only one.
You would really like Rushmore, I think.
Rushmore, 1998. Oh, I like the poster for it. Bill Murray. There we go. But yeah, with Fantastic Mr. Fox, this is the first time I've actually ever seen it. And not because I had no interest in it. It was always something that I had on the back of my mind. But I remember when it came out, I realized, okay, this isn't really a kid's movie, even though the way it was stop motion made me think it was. But after, when I was younger, seeing like a trailer for it, I thought, okay, there's some more adult kind of components attached to this than really being kid-centric. So I never really got around to it, but it's always something I was very curious about. And I'm actually really happy that we had this opportunity now to actually dive into it and retro it, because it gave me the opportunity to watch it. And after watching it the other day, I quite enjoyed it. and I wasn't sure how I would like it, but the pacing of everything, the subtle jokes, and just the way the characters were talking to each other, I really liked. I really liked George Clooney. I thought it was fantastic, and I liked how all the other characters, like again, Bill Murray was in this, and other characters and actors or actresses. They were just like me and Madison were trying to play like, oh, whoa, this is this actor, this is this actress, this is super cool, and they just fit with their characters a lot. Am I going into spoilers?
No, just overall thoughts.
Just
Don't-
overall,
don't-
okay.
Don't cut off the rest
Break
of
down the
us,
whole
you know.
movie right now.
Yeah.
We'll go in order. We'll each break down the movie and what we saw.
But yeah, overall, I do think this is a really, really good movie. I wish I saw it sooner, but I'm just happy I got the chance now to actually watch it. Liked the humor, and I liked how the story went. I thought it ended on a pretty good note.
So yeah, I think if you like the humor overall, you should probably dive into his filmography because there's a lot of I think actors that you like. He's Owen Wilson quite a bit and things like that. So you should definitely give.
Mila Jovovich.
Seems like he has a lot of reoccurring
Yes,
like,
he's very
actors.
Tarantino. That
Yeah.
Bill Murray's always popping up. Adam Brody's always popping up. Owen Wilson's always popping up. There's a Willem Dafoe's always popping. He's always making Willem Dafoe a super weird guy, and I like go watch Grand Budapest Hotel. He's a super weirdo. So which is like that's the type of thing you want to do with Dafoe because you know he's gonna be down for it. And like look at this, he plays like another type of weirdo, right? So Kirklin, what about you? Fantastic Mr. Fox,
Yeah.
has you seen it? And same about Wes Anderson.
Yeah, I have seen this one, and I've actually read the book too. Funny enough, this was one
Oh.
that we read like in the classroom in like grade 5 or something like that in elementary school. And then after that, like we like you know when they wheel in that like big fucking tube TV, and you just know it's gonna be the best class ever because you're gonna be watching a movie, and it was Fantastic Mr. Fox. So
This
I haven't read-
one,
yeah.
Oh my-
I guess not. No, it wouldn't have been because when was this out?
2009.
Yeah, no, I don't think because I was in.
Okay.
No, yeah.
I was like,
I
man,
think
you're
I'm
really young.
mistiming this. So then maybe I
Elementary,
watched it in middle
2009.
school then. Yeah, I remember watching it at least for a school thing. Shows
You
my
read the
age,
book.
how young I
You
am.
you read the book in grade 5.
Yeah,
Is the book like? Is it more like
it's
a
not a
kid's
novel.
book?
It's like a yeah. It's not like a comic book or a graphic novel. It's like
Kirkland's a little behind in his schooling.
what? What
Here,
are you
Kirk,
talking about?
you read this little book. Like Taylor's saying, like grade 5, you were reading like kids' novels and stuff like that. That's what he was saying.
How old are you in grade 5? You're not an adult.
No, but I didn't like take from Mr. Fantastic Mr. Fox. As
Don't look at my
being,
name, Taylor.
I didn't get the gist that it was really like aimed for like a younger audience.
Oh, it 100% is. And I would even push
Really?
back on you saying that this isn't a kid's movie because this is rated PG. And like, yeah, there's some killing in it, but like, there's no blood or anything.
A
Like,
lot of cussing.
yeah, it's like a play on that though, where it's like anybody can watch it, but then the adults might like really appreciate like the cleverness that they tackle the humor in that sense. But
That's a good way to put it.
getting back to my overalls, yeah, I haven't revisited this since like the first time like watching it. I feel like I've always wanted to, especially like I watched Isle of Dogs not too long ago, and Shay and I really really liked that, and I think I just didn't really put 2 and 2 together that it was like the same director. I haven't seen Grand Budapest or Budapest Hotel. So that would have been the only 2 projects that I've actually seen of him, and this was fantastic. No pun intended. That like this was chosen because I've
Someone
just
had to do it.
I've just
You
needed
didn't, I
like
would've.
I've just needed like an excuse to jump back in this movie, and man, I fucking love this movie. This was such a great time. Shay and I had so much fun watching this together. Like we were both just totally chuckling. The pacing was absolutely phenomenal. I felt like there wasn't any moment that I like didn't want to like look away from the TV. Like I was fully engaged, and it progressed in a rate that was like maybe on the faster side, but it was a good fast pace where it was just like I said, like I didn't want to miss anything, so I was totally engaged. The humor was so witty and crafty, and on a movie like this, I feel like I'm really able to just appreciate like the logistics that go into making something like this. So I'm watching it, I'm like, I can't believe that like they actually did stop motion, and like when you zoom in on like the characters and their furs kind of like waving, like they just have so many attention to details that I feel like you could watch this so many times and just notice different things, whether it's like I don't know, like the way that they do the smoke effects and stuff. So just like logistically, I can just really appreciate it. But like for the overall film overall, like that is absolutely amazing too. I didn't want to use fantastic again. Didn't want to double up on my puns already.
It's fantastic.
I'll probably be dropping that a lot tonight. But yeah, no, this was so great. And all the voice actors were so good. George Clooney as the lead is just such a great I would say casting for the role of Mr. Fox, because I just see him as like Danny Ocean in this movie.
Yeah.
Like in the Fox character though, and it worked so good. I knew it was Meryl Streep as Mrs. Fox, but still, I'm like listening to her. I'm like, this doesn't sound like Meryl Streep at all. But yeah, no, this was such a fun watch. I love this movie. I can safely say I love this movie. And yeah, thanks so much for picking this. This was great.
Domas.
The finger. Yeah, no, I want to thank Joshua as well for picking this one, because this was absolutely not on my radar. I've maybe heard of it in passing, but I had no idea what it was going into it, and I also loved it. I think it's fantastic. It's great. It's it's a movie that had me laughing the whole time, and none of the laughs were like, oh, like big jovial laughs, but they're just like just little smirks, or blowing some air out of the nose, but just like 50 times throughout the movie. Like, it just got me the whole way through. It's such a sincere story. There's obviously lots of heart and creativity in here, and I love stop motion. I'm a big stop motion fan. Me and some friends back in the day had a stop motion YouTube channel, which if you want to check it out,
Oh,
DJC Stop
nice.
Motion. We got. I just whipped it up. I was wondering if this channel still exists. 9 subscribers. So go get us up to 10 if you want to
Put you in those double digits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to see what I looked like in high school, you can go back to, or middle school, whatever it was. You can go back and check that out.
Just full goth. Just
Yeah. No, just very like greasy or nasty. I don't know what it was. Anyway, this movie is great. I really enjoyed it the whole way through. I'm very excited to talk about the artistry of it, because a lot of things for me, like just from the color palettes to the setting the scenes, and things like that really work. The voice acting's fantastic as well. And just a lot of stuff to shout out about this one. I really, really enjoyed this, and very glad that I could check it out. And now, I definitely want to go check out more Wes Anderson stuff, because I've seen like maybe half of Isle of Dogs. I don't know why I didn't finish it. And I don't think I've seen anything else of his. So he definitely seems right up my alley. So probably should go check out more of his stuff. There you go.
There you go. So, I had seen this movie before. So Wes Anderson, I've always talked about this before. It's like when I got into film, there's like all these names, directors, films you got to start watching, right? And Wes Anderson always came up because he has such a unique style. Like this type of cadence and this type of, I say this in the best way possible, but where it feels like almost every character is on Xanax, with their expressions, lots of times they're very muted, they're very toned down. It's very close to, and I don't believe he is, to me it's very close to like British TV or British comedy, where it's very dry and very subtle, and just it's not making a big boom pow for a joke. It's just a little line, a little look, a little moment, and then they move on quickly. They don't kind of rely on that. And I do love this movie. I always say though, with Wes Anderson, I have to be in a certain mood. I can't always just put on his films. There's some that I don't exactly love. I think the ones that are is like this, Rushmore, Moonrise Kingdom, and Grand Budapest was great. Ray Fiennes was fantastic, and Tony Revolver. So there's some that I absolutely would go back and watch, maybe not even every day, but more so. And then there's other ones where it's just the style just doesn't exactly work for me. But it's always every film. His attention to detail is just immaculate, between the shots, between things the characters do, between the things they're set up, the transitions. Like you can tell it feels like each majority of frames, and this is even in his live action stuff too, feel like, maybe less so in his earlier work, but he's got more and more feel like they're paintings, feel like they got specifically thought of, and probably obviously they were, but I mean, like, not all people do that, and that's one of his key senses. And that's where sometimes where the movies always look beautiful, if there's stuff in it that I'm not the biggest fan of, I can appreciate, and I still think he's one of the most talented directors we have. But yeah, this one I really like, because like I said, it reminds me of all the type of British dry humor I like. I love all the characters. A big trope for Wes Anderson is majority of all his main characters are kind of an asshole who kind of have a turning of heart that kind of get better, and that is Mr. Fox, where it's just like like he's still a nice guy. He's still doing things for his family. But I'd say the first half, he's pretty careless, and he's just kind of cares not exactly just about himself, but there's moments of him where this guy's kind of a jerk, and that's always what Wes Anderson does. The main character's always kind of a jerk, not a full jerk, not someone you want to root against, but at the same time you go, would I associate with this person? But by the end, they go on some journey where they're a better person for it. And honestly, people know I'm not the biggest fan of Bill Murray, so that's why a lot of Wes Anderson stuff, when he's in there, I gotta kind of go, it's fine he's in there, but that's why I'm not always putting it all the way on. But I don't know if this would be my favorite of his films, but it's definitely, as I said, it's in like the top 3 and everything like that. And I watched with the kids; they really liked it, and I was surprised because this is a bit more just. It's like quiet. It's not like a kids movie or show where it's very loud and big comedic things are happening or fight scenes. Like the most biggest thing that happens is setting a bread bakery on fire and stuff like that. Most of it's pretty toned down, but they enjoyed it. Lots of good one-liners that I just chuckle. And I'd seen it years ago and I kind of forgot. Like I think it's probably about 5. I'd seen it when it came out, but probably about 5 years ago when I'd seen it as recent. It was just like on Netflix and I put it on because it's just great to watch. It's a movie that you could mute and you would pick up most of the story, but also just like the visuals and just the art sound, just like the close-ups on these characters just look fantastic. So yeah, I think it's a great film, and I think Josh for bringing it up. So because unless we were doing a Wes Anderson retro and any time in our life, I don't know when we're getting to Fantastic Mr. Fox. It'd be a little while, So. But
maybe a Willem Dafoe retro. I could see us
yes.
doing that. That seems
I
up our
want
alley.
to very much so do a Willem Dafoe retro. I just think there's so much meat on that bone to get into. But one day we'll be hitting up those actors and directors. But yeah, where do you guys want to start? The bidding's open now.
Well, did Joshua have a paragraph or something on why he picked this? Because I
Let me go bring it up.
feel like it seems like
He's
a
like-
very
it's like he's never
random
seen
pick
it.
to me.
Yeah.
It's like I've never seen this
I like
movie,
the
but I
title
just
of
want you
this
guys to
one.
watch it. Yeah.
He just hit random. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I don't know. I feel like there's. I guess we also did Cocktail once. That was one Patreon pick. That's also a strange one. So I like these kind of off the wall movies I've never heard of. So
when he set this out, he said, "I'm sure you might have already seen it, but it would be awesome to hear what you guys think about it. It's always been a fun movie for me to go back to. I watch it from time to time. So just one picking that he liked and everything like that. So which is good because some patrons do the reverse. They pick movies to torture us. Go, hey, this is a
Fuck
shit
these
movie."
guys.
Yeah,
I feel like those early ones for sure.
Yeah. When people
There's an era.
Early pandemic when everyone was depressed and pissed off, they're like, yeah, we want a depressed GeekVerse. Watch Color of Space. Watch this one, and we'd always be like, did you think this was a bad movie? And they're like, oh, absolutely. We just want you to watch
Dragon Ball Evolution.
Yeah,
keeps me
Dragon
up
Ball
at night.
Evolution. Yeah, exactly. But just a movie he returns back to.
I think this will become that for me. I think it's pretty short runtime, right? And it's very lighthearted.
It's like
fun.
hour 28 or something.
Yeah, I think this, and that might even be with credits. So I definitely could see myself coming back to this one every I don't know, pretty often. Honestly, it's just like a good, a nice feel good sort of thing.
I was
Not
gonna say
too
it's a good
long
rainy
either.
day, bad mood type of movie.
I was gonna say the runtime too. Just makes it very digestible. Like I'm able to just throw it on and just
Throw it on.
able to just throw it on. Talking like I watch this every year. I just mentioned I haven't seen it in however long, but it's just very watchable because like I said, every moment I was just engaged on it, and I was just having a fun time.
The other thing I forgot to shout in my overalls is I absolutely love the score in this movie. I don't know.
Yes.
I guarantee it's probably somewhere, but after this, I'm like, I need to go look. If someone, Mr. Ambience or Ambience Worlds, has made an ambience this, and I need to fall asleep to this pronto. Because that's my biggest thing nowadays is when I like a movie or remind me of a movie, I'm like, has someone made an ambience for this movie? My go-to right now is the Batman. Because the Batman score and the rain people do in Gotham, it's like, oh my God. So I got to see with this one, if there's little sound, little digging going on, I got to check. I'm gonna find out during this review. Actually, I'm gonna look into it. Yeah. So
I agree. I think the score to me, it does a lot. It goes a lot of different places, but one kind of through line for me is that obviously it's made in a very professional way, but it feels like the sounds, the instruments that they picked, almost feel like they're like toy instruments or something that make it feel playful, and that this movie is. If you really narrow it down, it's a bunch of people who were playing with dolls on set making this. And I felt like the music kind of reflects that part of it and how playful this movie is. And obviously it does a lot of different things, but that was just kind of one takeaway I had from the soundtrack.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like every audio piece just it fit obviously so perfectly in each scene or usage that it had, but also for a movie like this, I'm like almost more interested, or I won't say more interested. I'm equally as interested in those behind the scenes videos and also just like how they did like
I
the
watched
sound
a handful
effects.
of those, yeah.
Yeah, and like because like especially just the creative, I mean the creativeness that goes into just making this visually, but also like just coming from other films. Like it is pretty cool. Oh, Travis Bumpty found something. It is pretty cool just seeing how creative they can get to have a certain like everyday object just make like a certain sound. So I love watching those videos.
So shout out, there's
What'd you
two.
find?
Oh man, oh no, that's Fantastic Beasts. Those liars, get out of
Oh,
here.
God.
But there was one that apparently only one person's made it. It's called Mr. Fox in the Fields, but it's been an even longer day. It's made by the YouTuber I Am Just Bones, who has 46 subscribers. But it's an hour-long video of a Mr. Fox ambience, and I will be listening to that in the next little bit here. So
What was it, Mr.
Alexandra
Fox
just-
in the Fields?
In the
it
field.
said-
Taylor's
yeah, Mr.
family
Fox
is
He's
in the
inside
Fields,
me.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I didn't even know about that. Alexander Desplat did the score, and he did like a lot of the Potters and stuff. And yeah,
Oh,
he's
really?
really talented. So yeah, there,
cool.
that explains it. That makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
I also love this sequence when it's just a bunch of people like sitting around a campfire jamming on a session, like the banjo players and stuff, and the lyrics are just nonsense and just random syllables that really don't make sense. I really like that song as well. That stood out to me in terms of like the score.
I love in that scene too when who was it Bean? No, I forget the names now.
I
I
think
always
it might
get them
have been
mixed
Bean.
up. Yeah, he comes in. He's like that's just lazy songwriting, and I love him just like calling out because he's also just kind of like calling out like all musicians that like use or incorporate that type of stuff in their own music is a fun little line. Just this bitter old man.
Doesn't like the scat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also like how like that character of Petey, like he just kind of like he would keep getting on that character's nerves, but he was still like important to him. Where he'd be like, "Petey, bring around the ladder," and he just like he always has this Petey guy around, but he's also just this wild banjo player. That was great.
I wanted to comment on one thing I thought was interesting, just from the, I guess, cinematography point of view, but just the like color palette of this movie really stands out to me, where there's almost no like green or blue, which I feel like are very just like generally bright, colorful, maybe childish kind of colors for things like this. But instead, this movie is just like kind of yellow, orange, and brown, and then like 100 or a million shades in between those three colors. And then it makes certain things, like a couple characters have blue eyes, so it like really pops. But just in general, and there's other scenes where it's very gray and whatnot. But generally, like sticking to that kind of color palette, I thought was very interesting, especially for a kids movie, or I mean, I guess a movie that is supposed to be palatable for kids as well as adults. So yeah, that really stood out to me, especially when they're doing the like one of the behind the scenes video. They showed like some of the swatches they had of like the color palettes they were using, and it was a very intentional thing. Which I think is interesting because they're like in fields and pastures and beneath a tree and all that, but still it's like really kind of muted to these what you would I guess see like as duller colors, but it totally worked and makes it have a very, I guess, just unique feel to it. So that stood out to me.
Yeah, and I don't think it's like exactly that, but just because it's from the Fox's point of view, it feels like it's like kind of color schemes that matches. Like when you look in, probably my favorite as far as on display, as far as the symmetry, all the details is the very end of the movie when they get into that the grocery store and stuff like that, and just the way like the boxes are lined and the aisles. It's just like it just looks so like when you see when you see them looking and like their mouths are frothing, you're like, I would be that too. Like look at all these things. So yeah, that's really good. And obviously this is different because it's not about greens or blues because it's actually in the movie, but when they see the wolf in the third act, that's another thing that always stands out too, because there's definitely some whites around, but this is a very strong, like icy type of white, like an ash gray white. And I just love like he's just so enamored when he starts to cry, but just this huge like it's completely like the rest of the set or the setting where it's like everything is brown and orange with a little tan in there. It's going, and then it goes right to the wolf and it goes up, and then all that is black and white. And it's just, especially because they're talking about the wolf and have this like importance and stuff like that. But that's what is great, because then when you get moments that do, like you said, with the eyes or use different colors, they pop even more because your eye has been trained for maybe half an hour not to see that color because you're seeing all these kind of this palette grade. And It's a fun choice. I didn't even pick up about the green because thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, because even you think about where their house is, it's like a yellow, like hay type of field. You know, it's not like a bunch of green hills and everything like that.
I gotta say, I love
Yeah.
that wolf fist bump. By the way, that
Oh,
was
yeah.
like that was maybe the
I
biggest
love that.
individual laugh for me. You know, I said it was a bunch of like smaller, kind of subtle jokes, but that one to me, I was just like, I love that. That's great.
That one was like
so much
it was
build
like
up to it too. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It was a slow build up, and then like he just keeps saying things, and the wolf just isn't reacting. And then eventually, like when he just puts his arm up randomly, it's just like, oh, that's kind of strange.
Yeah.
He's doing that, and then the wolf just like still staring at them, and then he just like very erect face, like straight up in the air. That one got Shay and I even like. I think it was a lingering one because the build up was so slow and long that by the time that like the humor actually got me, it was just like it had me for like as equal like equal same distance or equal length just to get to the laugh. I was laughing for, so that was fantastic. But like just everything that you mentioned with the color palettes too, I feel like maybe I didn't even really notice it until you just shouted it out right now. But yeah, it was a very very just a great choice, honestly, from them. And it made like the wolf sequence, when you actually see like the different color palette, it really pops because it's like, oh, I haven't even seen this really like yet, and it just feels so different. But it also, like, we didn't have any winter sections of the movie, so then actually just seeing snow, like, it just feels so different. But yeah, I loved all that.
Fuck that fist. Now I'm just thinking about it again.
It's so great.
See, I had a couple actual, like, most times, like you guys, where I was just kind of like laughing to myself, but I had 3 particular moments where I just outright belly laughed. And one was just because the whole movie, he does the, and finally at the end, the battery asks him, like, why do you do that? He's like, it's my trademark. Like, just so casually. And I just laugh also because in my life, like what we do for a podcast, we always think of like shit like that. So I was just like, oh man. So there's that. One thing that just killed me, I think Gwen was worried about how much it killed me, is when they needed blueberries. Like, I told you to get blueberries. Like, no, you didn't. Why would I wouldn't remember if you told me blueberries. Like, of course you should remember. I wrote it on your hand, and it's just a shot of his hand. Please don't forget blueberries. And man, that got me so good. And then the last one that, like I said, there's other ones, but it's when Fox is gonna go save the nephew, and he's saying goodbye to everybody, and he's like waving, and he does his whistle, and he clicks, and then he climbs the ladder, and he just like stops, goodbye, and then he goes up because like it's like he was wanting a more like reaction from the people he was saying goodbye to, and he never really got it. And that's what I like about Fox, because Kirkland's right where he is. This movie is very Ocean's 11, where Danny Ocean's a very self-centered guy who's trying to pull off a heist. Now, he's not pulling off a heist at the end, but it is a heist-like thing where he's trying to, you're doing this, we're going to get the nephew back, we're going to get my tail back. And I actually forgot his tail got shot off. But yeah, I always loved like Mr. Fox, as far as, like I said, he's not a extremely likable character at the start, but I like him as a character just watching him because he's entertained. But even the interaction he has with his son, I'm like, yeah, you're kind of a jerk. You're kind of just almost like a know-it-all, and I hope something happens in the story that kind of brings that down. And definitely at the end, you feel like they've bonded, so it's a good character arc for him.
I was gonna say too, like because he is this Danny Ocean type, where he just always has the plan, and that's even like, I feel like that's even accentuated when you see him leave, and then it goes to, who is it, Badger, who's like the new semi-leader, and he's like, so we just go into groups and split up and do that, and like it's just like, oh, this isn't as easy as I thought of, like being the leader character. But like he always kind of has a plan, but things don't always go the way that he plans it, and then it's just like, oh, okay, but he's never like, oh, damn it didn't go that way. Like it just seems like he's pretty cool with it. It's like, okay,
Well,
yeah, there you go.
He
We'll do
likes
this
making
then.
the plans more than he likes going through.
But yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like his quick little like one-liners whenever something like that happened, it was just so great. And I feel like just having that George Clooney voice to tie into it, like it fits so well for me. I love the character of Mr. Fox in this movie.
Man, I gotta comment on the voice, because George Clooney is, I feel like, someone I haven't actually seen a lot of his movies, and obviously he's very famous, but I could not figure out who it was. I'm like, obviously this is a very famous actor, but I was grinding my gears trying to figure out who this was. I was like, man, at times it kind of sounds like Brad Pitt in some of the way he talks, and like when he's like his deeper voice at times. For a bit, I was like, man, is that fucking Johnny Knoxville? Like, his voice actually at times, like, obviously Johnny Knoxville is very over the top and like yelling a lot. So, but if it's like, if Johnny Knoxville never yelled, he actually sounds a lot like George Clooney. Maybe I was just going crazy too. But when I finally saw it too, when I went on IMDb, I'm like, oh yeah, I should have known that one. But I'm sure you guys recognized him instantly. But as someone who hasn't seen as many of George Clooney stuff, that was kind of a fun riddle trying to solve. Like, who is this very recognizable voice? I cannot picture who it is.
Yeah, I think that honestly George was the reason I saw this, because like that was at the time where I was starting to find his things that weren't just Batman and Robin or like mainstream stuff. I was like, oh, same thing as like the Brad Pitt thing. Oh, this guy can actually act, and I became a big fan of him. And then I was like, okay, what's this? And then I feel like this might have been. Because it might have been one of my first because I'd seen Rushmore, but then after that I feel like I did a deep dive after. But no, I remember watching it on TV one day. But Tiff, what do you think about Mr. Fox here?
Again, I think his comedic kind of timing was spot on. I liked how he would just be saying all these one-liners, and it just started to make me laugh and chuckle. And I wanted to kind of hone in on what you're talking about with the relationship between him and his son, and how that kind of got on the better men near the end. But like, there's the one part where he's not even paying attention to his son when his son's already pissed off that like his cousin's here, Chris. And so Ash is like up top, and he like dives in. And I like the way that they did this and stylized it, because when he hits the water and it splashes, and he's just like, he comes out, and his dad just reading his column, not really giving a shit. And then all of a sudden, like, Chris goes in, and it's just like this gloop, and he just comes out perfectly. And then Mr. Fox, he's like praising him and everything. And Ash is just like, oh, do you think I'm athletic, Dad? Like, so I liked how they had this kind of this dynamic, and where that built up to where Ash had like an outstanding kind of like reveal with his, like, he had his cape on and just like opening fire, and he's just doing all these cool like dodges and everything like that. Like, I love that whole sequence with Ash. It was great to see him come around. But I think Mr. Fox was he was fantastic. And the dynamic and relationship with Kylie as well, that just cracked me up. That was probably one of my like kryptonites, was when he would be saying something and Kylie would just like, it cuts to Kylie with like zoomed out eyes, and it would be so red. I'm like, fuck, this just gets me every time.
That's you're Kylie.
I know. I'm Kylie.
Yeah, that Mr. Fox
Sometimes
and
I feel
Kylie
like
is
not even listening to me.
Yeah, that's our dynamic. I didn't even think about that. Of
It
me
really
saying,
is.
then you're like, oh, what do you think about that trailer? Or what's the question
Just
again?
like
That's
spaced.
Fuck, I didn't even think of
Yeah, that was a good reoccurring joke where like I feel like ever since the first one it got me, and then I would just like kind of expect it, but then when it happened it would like still kind of catch me off guard, and then adding on to what you're saying, Taylor, about like the comparisons between Ash and Christopherson, that was 100% for me.
So
I
fun.
loved all of it. And like even just like Christopherson's like arrival, I love that they had like the little, it's almost like they're doing like act 2 or like a new chapter where they would say like Christopherson arrives, and then it's just like unaccompanied minor, and like all those little details were so great. But yeah, no, like the diving sequence where he does this cool little like, you know, cannonball, nice little splash, and then he does this like really slow like 180 like twice, and then just like a little ploop, and like all those comparisons were just so fantastic. And then I like when they like kind of become buddies, and then, you know, they don their bandit masks and they look at each other like, we look good.
Well,
It's like, yeah, we do.
that scene where like he doesn't want to sleep underneath the table, and I like chuckled at this with how kind of like mean Ash was being, but like it completely 180'd on me when he
Totally.
started to cry in there. I was like, oh shit, like I like the delivery of these feelings and emotions just really hit. And I like that, okay, Ash climbs down, turns the train on, and I didn't need anything more than that. I needed just them looking at the train, just enjoying that moment. It was a really, really good time between those two characters.
It was very wholesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely wasn't expecting that. I thought he was going to just like give Christopherson his bed or something. But then, yeah, when they just kind of sit there, and obviously Christopherson like feels better like right away. And it is just a very wholesome scene. And I think the fact that nothing was really said or more to that scene makes it even like that much more special. It just goes to show that Ash isn't just a piece of shit. You know, like it's not like just this angry, like, yeah, I guess he is kind of like an angry kid, but that's all he really is. Like, he's not like an actual evil character. It's just like, oh, I actually have to like go do this, and he's just like frustrated when he does it. I loved all those little details.
That follow-up scene to that when they were in school and
The science lab scene.
the science lab. I loved how Chris's partner is just like, he blows it up. He's like, well, that, like, now I got to put it out. Like, he's just like, It's so subtly like just like this is such a nuisance. And I like how Ash's partner, the female fox, can't remember her name, but she's so fixated on him. Like, I like your ears and everything like that. And Ash is like, you're my partner, right? It's just he's so pissed about it. It's great.
And then like the next scene, like, oh yeah, we're going steady now. Just like the little throwaway line.
That steady line one was really good because that's where it throws in like that stuff where it's similar what Kirk was talking about, things that might be in there for kids not getting it now. This is a complete 180, but the same thing that Shrek always gets talked about, right? Where there's like jokes in there, but those are more overt, like really mature jokes. Something like a kid's not going to appreciate like we're going steady, but as an adult, the parent, right? You know what that means. It's like, and it's just a little line in there. It's great, doesn't change anything. But let's take our first ad break, and then we'll keep breaking down Fantastic Mr. Fox. We'll be right back. And we're back. And I don't have much more to add on Ash because you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head. All I'll just add is that you talk about Clooney being perfect casting. Jason Schwartzman is perfect casting for this because there's so many movies where I'm just fucking annoyed by the guy. And I'm sure he's a nice guy in real life, but he always plays this type of character that just like gets on your nerves. Like that definition of like punchable face and punchable like attitude. Just like he just does it so well, and that's where it's good for Ash. But at the end of the day, like the character just wants his father's like love and approval, right? He just wants to, that's always looking for. Even though for most of the movie it feels like an almost antagonistic sort of relationship. Once it kind of reveals, its true self of what they both kind of want or are lacking. Again, much like Fox's character arc, it is well done, and there is some good one-liners like you guys said. But yeah, Schwartzman's perfect because he can just get on my nerves in a good way. I think that's always his choice to do it that way. But he's one of the best at it. So.
Mm-hmm. I'll jump to another character and shout out the rat, the bodyguard, who I did not catch that this is Willem Dafoe as this role. But I just loved how weird looking the rat looked compared to other characters where he was like very slender, and so he was almost snake-like in a way. And then like just the two teeth just majorly sticking down. But yeah, just like the fight scene in the cidery, and then when he pops up in the sewer again later. Like that might be my favorite character just in terms of like screen time to quality ratio. Like I don't know, I just love every sequence of him. He's very creepy, but like he's very suave at the same time. That was maybe a highlight character for me. Really, really fun.
He's got his little badge.
Great. Yeah.
What'd you say, Travis?
Oh, I said his death scene's great. I absolutely love that. It's just like all I wanted was to taste like the fine cider, and then they're just like, just hold his head up, and they get like the cider, and then he died in peace and had his redemption. Yeah, it's so good. And then like
gold.
Yeah, just like literally he drinks it, and then like the frame cuts, it cuts back, just those X's on the eyes. It's just like
anything with the eyes always so good.
Yeah, just so overt. Like he's dead, he's gone. I
love it too. He's like, you wouldn't have told us if we didn't kill you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like he was a very I feel like maybe I had like pulled up the IMDb when I was trying to figure out who oh my gosh, who's Jason Schwartzman? Ash. Like who that voice actor was, because I could recognize it, but then when I pulled up Jason Schwartzman, I'm like, that name is familiar, but I just don't know really where he's from. But that's where I saw Defoe was the rat. And then as soon as he was revealed, I was not disappointed by any means. He was so fantastic, and yeah, I loved his little like snaps that he would do, and then like especially like in like the sewer when he's like approaching them with his knife and he's doing like this snap, like he's about to like break out in like a musical, like it's a scene from Grease. It was so fantastic, and as you mentioned, Dylan, I loved his slenderness, like super lanky and like super stretched out. I feel like he was just really taking up like a lot of space with his lanky little frame. Yeah, he was so great.
That scene too, like in the cidery, was a cool one that I saw in one of the behind the scenes video I watched, where the lighting was so important for that scene, and that they wanted the lights like shining through the cider, so the cider looked like golden and stuff, and that it kind of gives the scene like this sort of glow to it. And it was just interesting because like anytime they moved the camera anywhere else, they would have to like adjust tons of the different cider bottles, like even just by a centimeter, like half a centimeter, just moving them over slightly so that the light shone through in the right way. And it's like not enough that you would notice in the background that the cider's in a different spot because they're all just the same thing over and over again. But it was pretty cool watching the behind the scenes for that one and just seeing like, and that one really highlights like the attention to detail and how how long like one scene can take in stop
Yeah.
motion. It's like, I don't know, that was definitely one I'd appreciate, because I hadn't really thought about lighting with stop motion so much. I thought about like the set pieces and doing these grander effects and stuff, but something like lighting is not something I'd really thought about before. But it is important at the small scale that they're at too, right?
Yeah, no, I grew up a massive Wallace and Gromit fan. That was like my first interaction to stop motion. I guess that and probably like Nightmare Before Christmas. But the amount of work that has to go into these type of films are just, I could not even imagine. Like, I want to be a filmmaker. Those interest me in no light, just for the fact of, not because I don't want to do them, just because that is just so daunting. And it's like that you just have to be so particular about these things. And that's where it's like there's never a moment in this film where, oh, this feels a little bit off. Or because there's times even when I love Wallace and Gromit, even if it's because it's a little bit older, like, okay, you could see like whether it was someone's like fingerprint moved a little bit, like you could see just a little bit, but this just feels like flawless. Like this, like you can't catch it. Feels there's shots that look so good that always, I know it's stop motion, but it makes me question, think it's like, is it animation done in a stop motion type of way? You know, is it just a style choice, but it's really just animated that way? And it's not. It's still all stop motion. And it's just ridiculous. And it's a big feat they pull off with this movie, because I think this would probably be one of the best. I'd have to really sit back and think, but this is definitely one of the best looking ones of that genre.
I'd agree. I mean, I can say as a stop motion artist myself, I mean, making a 1 minute long video would take us hours and hours, and that's, you know, not, and they look like shit. Like, we didn't think about lighting and stuff like that, obviously. So definitely a testament there. I feel like it must be, I'm putting a lot of credit on just the director here when I know it's like a huge team of people, but even just things like the storyboarding and planning out so much of it. And I don't know if they would, I imagine they would record all the like dialogue first. That way they can match the voices up that way. Otherwise, I feel like you'd be going a lot of back and forth to try and get things to line up. Yeah. But I guess they can like delete or move frames around and things like that to get things to work. But whatever it is, I just feel like there must be tons of planning that goes into like, okay, here's exactly how this set is going to look. Here's like the scale of it. And here's like, I feel like that's where something like, Travis, how you mentioned how a lot of the jokes just kind of get dropped and then they move on immediately. And I just feel like a lot of that stuff, it probably seems like very precise to me in terms of even just the scripting and like planning from the very beginning before they've even shot anything. I bet he can kind of envision like, okay, this is how this scene's going to go. And obviously challenges come up and things, but I just feel like the planning mind it would take to make something like this scale must be absolutely insane. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What was it? Oh yeah, Travis, you brought up Wallace and Gromit. Yeah, I watched that as a wee young lad. Same with Chicken Run. So like I definitely appreciated.
Chicken Run is my introduction.
Yeah, like the stop
Chicken Run
motion
people.
films. I feel like as a kid, it was just like the British humor. It like confused me, but I liked like the logistics of like what was going on. And like you said, like, you know, Dylan, if you're like a professional stop motion, I was like an amateur stop motion. I was recording some stop motion. I remember. Nice. I'm not sure. I think
do you have those
there's
videos
a channel.
Still?
Probably because my parents had this huge ass like, what was it called, like a camcorder, like where you would take like a huge tape in it, and yeah, there's probably some tapes. I'll have to pull them out of the Patzer family basement. And I honestly probably didn't even get to a minute, and it was just me. I didn't have a full crew. I wasn't putting them on YouTubes or anything, but yeah, no, it was lots of fun, especially like when you're rewatching it and then you like forgot to pause at one point and your hands like in it. It's like, fuck, I totally screwed that up.
Yeah, you gotta delete those frames.
I was a wee lad, but no, like you shouting out the lighting and everything, and even just, I mean, I feel like a huge component of this movie is like the cinematography and like the way that they have like the scenes transitioning and everything, and it feels like a platformer at times, especially when they're like running like sideways. And then I just love seeing all the little details of maybe they take this rope to like do a flip over here, and then if you like focus on like some of the details of the background, like they don't need to add those things in there. It's not like this is a plot point of like, oh, this barrel helps them get into this facility. It's just little like attention to detail things that I have so much fun. I think that's really what makes or a big component that makes this movie so rewatchable is those little things that I maybe missed on the first go around. And big exhale right there. You scared me.
I did. I was trying to time
That was
it.
like that, and then that was something. And then
up.
he got shot to the roof, and his camera cuts to black. 7 days. It's up.
I wanted to kind of reiterate what you said there, just how they were using it kind of like a platformer at times. The more heavier like action sequences, I enjoyed that the way they shot it. They used it to their advantage, where it would just be like that platformer style, where it'd be like just this one backdrop, and the characters just kind of slide in and like facing towards like you as the viewer. And they did it with a few different things, or even like, you know, Mario style, where it's like Ash is like just going over the objectives, like going like sideways along the screen. And I really enjoyed that kind of stuff, and I think that that kind of film style really worked to their advantage, and it probably made it a little easier too for the crew to just kind of like motion stop within the confines of this like horizontal kind of timeline, I guess you could say. So
Yeah,
like,
easy to
props
fix
to
for
them.
mistakes probably too. Like let's just travel back that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned of them just like facing the camera. I loved all those moments when it would just be like all of them like staring right at it. Specifically when Mr. Fox, anytime he would like just smile and he just has this like really like
I love
this like
that cheesy
vicious.
smile. Oh,
yeah,
so
it's like
good.
he like looks like a predator, but he's like
Yeah.
totally happy and it's just
Gritting
like
his teeth a little
yeah. All those moments were fantastic for me, especially because it's like he would say something that like makes him happy, and then he just shows this face like he's like a murderer. It was fantastic.
He's like, is he happy? Is he just bullshitting here? Like you can't
Yeah.
exactly tell with him, you know. But no,
and the
most times
situations
happy.
would make like the viewer kind of question that, like, is he actually? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it wasn't always so clear.
Yeah. I was.
uh,
Oh, go ahead, Dylan.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to quickly mention about the tail because I'd forgotten that his tail got
Ooh,
shot,
yeah.
and that's like I've seen this movie before, but I forgot that he got shot in this whole. And I guess another sequence I actually probably did laugh, maybe not as loud as those other three, but when they're like, yeah, that guy's probably wearing it or something like that, and then cut to the newscast where one of the guys like wearing it as like a tie and stuff like that, and just like how like. The whole movie goes from like we're gonna do a heist to get this tail, and then we're gonna go to a heist to get your nephew back because you guys couldn't get the tail back. Like it's just a heist on top of a heist, and it's another heist because Mr. Fox, like his failed heist too, that got them in this situation, right? So I love that. It's just like everybody failing, and yeah, it just leads to some good stuff. And my nickname is when they're starting to set up the second heist, and the Ash is just like, oh, I can get through there, and I can't remember who asked, but like, how do you think you can get through there? And he's like, because I'm little. And he says it in the most like evil way, like it's confident but evil way, and he has this great little like sock bandana. Like did you I can't even remember the back and forth that he has with the nephew, but he's like, oh, you made a bandana, right? Or you have one? He's like, yeah. He's like, all I had was socks. But it looks, he's like, it still looks fine. And when he puts it on, just that like tail sticking up. So good stuff.
Remember like the
guys.
pantyhose, like when you have to like
Yes.
whatever you can to cover your face.
Yeah. Another thing I really like. I mean, this obviously these are animal characters, foxes and things like that, and every once in a while they allude to that. They're like, so and so. We do this. We are this way because we're animals. Like they'll just throw it in there,
Yeah.
and it's usually like non-issue. Like they're just very like human-like characters in the way they act and stuff. But one thing I really liked is that anytime they would eat something, they would just go fucking nuts and scarfing up. Another behind the scenes thing was funny. It was just seeing like George Clooney and stuff do that, where he would just ravage a piece of bread or something as they were recording scenes like that. So that was one of those touches that I liked. That sometimes this movie totally forgets that they are animal characters, but then moments like that, they just fully embrace it. And that was something that always got a laugh out of me in like the maybe 3 or 4 times that it happened throughout the movie.
Absolutely, just adding on to the animalistic side of them. A scene that I just kind of forgot about, and it just kind of caught me off guard, but man, did it make me laugh, was when Mr. Fox is going to see his lawyer for like buying a new place, and then he's like, you shouldn't do this, and then they start cussing at each other. It's like, yeah, I know the cuss you are. He's like, what'd you just call me? And then they just like totally do this like totally like a stare down, like they're just like
Right.
walking and like posturing and just like being animals. It was not expecting it, and fuck, it made me laugh, and that happened a few times throughout the movie. Oh, it was so great.
I like the inclusion of them saying what the cuss the whole time, because the first couple times it's a bit silly, but then obviously it's supposed to be intentional, like kids can watch this too, so you want to keep it light. But then it just became funny after a while, and whenever they would say that, and obviously Taylor, you got the nickname there, so I'm assuming you also liked that.
Yeah, I enjoyed that we didn't have to default to like what the fuck, all the time or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I
It would
don't
not
think
be
you would've got
PG.
that
We'll
one.
do it on the
Yeah,
podcast.
I would not have been reading it in elementary school if that was the case.
But no, I appreciate the cuss. Like, yeah, it was good. It was good timing. It worked for me right away. I was kind of like, oh, like, and Madison picked up on it. Like, they're saying cuss instead of swearing. I'm like, oh yeah.
And it just feels like it's like a mini world building thing. Like we know why they're doing it in our world, but it almost adds to like even if it was rated R, they would maybe still say cuss. Like in my mind, like that's how they say this. That word has been deemed for bad language, and that's how these people or animals are going to carry each other and the conversation. So,
Definitely.
I was going to take one more ad break, and then I think probably it'll be close to the final thoughts and overalls and some last shout outs. So we'll be right back. And we're back. Dilmas, you're going to say something.
Sure. Another thing that got me every time was the burrowing sequences, because I like that there were certain moments when obviously every movement is very intentional and very precise when it's like a smaller scene, but sometimes you'd get a scene that has a bunch of characters or a scene like that when they're all like burrowing, and it just becomes like a complete mess where they just roll them up, and it seems like every frame they just throw them in a random spot and you don't really care about the consistency of it. I also don't. I wonder in like the material part of it of how they're digging through this thing. That's something I'd like to see in the behind the scenes of what exactly they're doing with the material. If they're cutting something away each time, or if it's just like a background that looks 3D and whatever it is. Very cool and also very funny. And then like when you get like the zoom out shot and they've just built like this whole world underneath. So I really liked the burrowing sequences. Another thing that stood out to me.
Just the ferocity of how much they dig. And at one point, she's like, yeah, we're foxes. We dig. That's what we do. We do it best and everything like that. Like, we can go real fast and stuff like that. And I guess I should mention that, like, I realized this a couple of years ago. I was talking to Emily, like, I've always talked about on the podcast, like, I'm a big monkey guy. But there's we're just talking about foxes. Like, man, I just love foxes. And
They're very popular
actually
animal.
I tied it back to Star Fox. I'm like, oh, I think that's why I fell in love with foxes. But just the
I was
look
gonna say
of
even
them.
Ghost of Tsushima too, right? They had a lot.
Well,
of
that helped. Yeah, but
Tunic
I think
this
that's
year had a very cute fox.
I still got to
That's
do
right.
that. Yeah, I think Ghost around the time because I was around the water park. I was just like, I don't know why I sound Boston there for a second. I was around the water park. I was at the park. I'm with these foxes. But let's say that cat in that fucking tree, all right? But no, I love foxes so much, and I just kind of forgot about that during this film. Like the little things, that just like little like kind of real life things that would bring into about what a fox would do. It brought me great joy. So, and then just great color schemes on the foxes. So.
yeah.
Also,
Couple-
Miss Fox is a saint because she should have left Mr. Fox maybe a long time ago. Because it sounds like
Give
he's
him a lot
done.
of chances.
Yeah,
Man, all
quite
that
a few
meat she was getting though in her food
Whoa.
stores there, like first one chicken and then all that extra stuff. Like,
It's
she was
true.
loving it.
She just liked it and says gave him a lot of chances because he's got her like in the middle of the film when the nephew's kidnapped, he's lost his tail and they've completely lost their home and property. It's like at that point, and it's all his fault. It is 100% his fault. He always means well, but man, again, she was very kind to him and he's very lucky.
Yeah.
because
I will say though, I absolutely loved their. I mean, the dialogue was so like clever throughout this whole movie, but particularly between those two, when they're in basically their honeymoon phase, like they're living the life, and then they get captured, and she reveals that she's pregnant, and like those like the dialogue between themselves are so great, and then the moments when, yeah, like. Christopherson gets taken and like she just totally confronts him right there, and like it's a serious conversation, and it's there's not like that much goofiness really going on. Like it's actually just like a serious marriage conversation, right? In like a PG movie for kids or parents and kids. It kind of caught me off guard, especially when she like totally like slashes at him, right? Like as if she just like slaps across the face. They're both kind of like welling up, and it's just like a really serious conversation. She drops the line of, I might paraphrase this, but it's something like along the lines like, I love you, but I never should have married you. And it's just, like, it's actually like a really heavy line right there. It's just like, wow, like that's like taken out of Marriage Story or something, right? I haven't seen
I wish
it,
every
so
day
I
you got hit by a
apologize.
car.
Yeah. I haven't seen Marriage
And
Story.
Mrs. Fox punches the wall, the little hut.
Adam Driver is saying "what the cuss" a lot.
I'm surprised Wes Anderson and Adam Driver not work together because that is a duo. Adam Driver, I think, would fit right into this type of dry humor type of world. So one day, Mark Morris is going to have
Maybe his next movie. Yeah.
live action Mr. Fox. He'll play the fox.
Taylor, you mentioned Mr. Fox bringing her meat. Speaking of meat, I was on IMDb and I saw this image. You know, nice little image here, and then I couldn't help but notice something in the top left corner.
There's a
and I'm just
cock
gonna-
right there.
I'm just gonna zone
Whoa.
in. Yeah, is that a vein?
Jesus.
Is that a vein?
What is that guy?
Detailed?
What's
Might be
some
a
guy
twig.
doing? What?
Like,
It's one of the factory owners up top just
Yeah, what is some guy doing up there?
just
That-
finding a
Again?
hole.
Wow.
again, like I was just scrolling IMDb and it just jumped out at me, so I had to bring that up. And it's funny, Taylor, you mentioned
Wow.
That is a
so.
certified cock right there.
Fantastic.
Not a
Ron.
rooster.
Stamp it. That is a cock.
Oh, that's great. I was gonna bring up. I love the usage of language in this movie. Again, like it's just very clever the usage of like the English language, but all the moments when you would speak French or when they're naming like the Latin names, that was really really funny. Like they're like basically code names of like what they are.
Right.
That was so great. And then again,
Oh, I
tying
love the
back
little
to-
guy, the little tiny guy.
Yeah,
right
exactly.
there.
Like I want to fight.
Yeah.
I just tying it back to like one of my favorite scenes that we've already mentioned, but the wolf scene when he approaches them or doesn't approach them, stops, looks at him, and what is he? What's the wolf one? Oh, it's like Canis something, whatever the wolf Latin name is.
Lupus, Canis lupus or something.
Thank you. Yes, you know what it is. And he's like Vulpus Vulpus. And then he's like, no, doesn't speak Latin or English. And then he tries speaking to him in French, and just nothing's even happening. And then, of course, the scene that is just so great that I have to bring it up again. But like the fist bump or the raising of the fist, that was just it was so great. And again, like just Mr. Fox's usage of French, usage of Latin, usage of English, like it shows that this Fox is very well read. Like he's a very intelligent individual, and but I loved all those moments of the Latin usages. Because sorry, before you go, Taylor, but like when he's talking about bad, because it's who Kylie that's his name, right? The
Kylie, yeah.
the opossum, and then he's like, "What's my Latin name?" He's like, "I don't even think they had them in ancient Rome." Like, it's just like all of like the history knowledge that he has. It's like, man, this guy's basically Aragorn with all his knowledge.
I was just gonna kind of piggyback on a little bit more of that Kylie, Mr. Fox dynamic there. But when they were going up to do one of their heists, and Ash just like sneaks in behind them, and Fox is like, what are you doing here? Like, oh, how'd you find out what we're doing here? Go away. And he leaves. And it's so quick when Chris just like pops up, like, oh, good, you're here, Chris. Like, it's like, whoa, what the fuck? I'm just trying to catch up with this. It was so funny though. I loved it.
Good stuff.
Fantastic.
A couple things I thought were fun about the behind the scenes. So, Roald Dahl, I guess, is the original writer of this story that this was adapted from, and yeah. So I guess the original story did not have any illustrations, but I guess it was pretty popular at the time. So there was an illustrated version done where it was just, I guess it was like every few pages there was like some illustration, I guess, for a big scene or something like that. And one of them from the book was the hill that they lived on with the tree, and specifically when like part of it got dug out, and it was kind of just like, an uneven hill with just like an apple with a bite taken out of it essentially. And it was cool to see that like from that illustration, which was just black and white, very simple, it like was exactly the same as that. Like they really stayed true to some of those early illustrations of it. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then I guess part of the story from that original writer's perspective was almost self-referential, feeling like maybe I guess how he feels about himself or something like this. And like they went to, I guess he had passed away by the time they were making this movie, but they went to where he lived and like the farm and whatever pastures area that he lived near, and like they filmed like a lot of stuff there and got I guess like inspiration from certain shots and certain trees. Like that tree is a real life tree that they that is kind of based off and stuff like that. So I feel like they went to a lot of lengths to make it feel very authentic to that original writer. I thought that was pretty cool. And, it was also fun to see that, like, part of the George Clooney thing, like he's tearing up that bread, as I mentioned, but he's also just like running around in the grass and like running around some trees and doing stuff. And like they're recording that. I don't know if they use those takes in the final movie, or it's more like do this to get the cadence of it and then we'll re-record it in a booth. I don't know exactly how all that stuff worked, but still I thought that was pretty cool how kind of true they stayed to I guess some of the original story, the original writer and stuff like that. So I wanted to show a couple of those things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I remember seeing the illustration also for like when we went through the book in school, was of the 3 facilities, I guess, of like being bus. Well, I'm blanking on their
The
names
three
right now.
Bs.
Unfortunately, the 3 Bs, yes, of like their locations, and I remember even, I mean, if I remember correctly, like they actually had the humans like of the illustrations like in there because they obviously describe like what they look like, and then there would
Right.
be like a really cartoony version of what they are, and I remember that being very similar to what they did in the movie as well. I shouting out Owen Wilson's character in this. I love that scene when they're playing like that whack ball thing, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the coach is just like, well, no, it's like, hey, your dad was like absolutely like the best guy that's ever come around here. And it's just like, don't compare yourself to that guy, okay? And then like Christopherson goes up there, just completely like blows his mind. He's like, this guy's never played before. Oh my gosh, you can totally tell he's blood related to your dad. He's like, it's not blood related. It's on my mother's side. It's just like, oh well, yeah. Like it's just again like that's where like the comparisons between Ash and Christopherson really worked for me. All that humor was so great, and just hearing Owen Wilson as that, I don't even know what he was, like a polar bear or something. I don't know, but he was a very small polar bear if that was the case.
Yeah.
The other scene I wanted to shout out to was the digging you guys already mentioned. And yeah, Dylan, you mentioned like when they are digging like as a group, it's just kind of like kerfuffled. And then like when they stop, you can like tell that like there's people that are like way in the back, clearly not digging anything, but they're still just like going like this. It was again, just a lovely detail. And then when they're digging down south and then down in the earth, Ash is like, I think it's when Mr. Fox is like talking to Ash, he's like putting dirt in his ears, and then like it's just like they're talking to each other, and then it brings up like Christopherson comparison, and then he looks over and Christopherson's like digging like a madman. He's like, look at him, he's a natural. It's just I loved all the praise towards Christopherson,
The
towards
golden
this movie.
child. My last note is, I don't know if it's putting you guys on the spot at all, but I feel like one, we talked about like the arc, I guess, with the dad and his son and Christopherson. You could also throw in there as well. But like, is there a deeper message to this movie? What is like, is there like a theme or something? Because I feel like I didn't have a takeaway in that way, but I felt like it's the kind of movie that does. So I just wanted to run that by you guys. Is there any theories you guys have, or what did you take from it in terms of a deeper message?
I took it as kind of like the midlife crisis kind of route where,
Ooh,
he expressed several times where like, my dad was so many years in Fox years and I'm this old now too in comparison. And he gets the idea of like, he wants to have, midlife crisis. He wants a little bit more money. He doesn't want to be poor like his wife says to him. So he sees the better house. He sees like, oh, here's a way to feel youthful again and go in on these heists. So that's probably my takeaway from it.
Yeah, to me, it was just appreciating what you have because, like, what Taylor just said, mentioning the money, but right away she's like, yeah, but are you happy? He's like, yeah, we're happy, but we're also still poor. But it's like he was missing the whole point of that conversation, which happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie. So already it sets you up for this character is doing the wrong thing because this character who's supposed to be his most trusted person is telling him we don't need these things because we have everything. And as we already talked about before with the son, there's so many times where he passed over his son. And I think so. I think it was like appreciate what you have, but also just working with others as well because he was trying to do a lot of things alone and it was not panning out. It wasn't working. So it was, trusting the loved ones, appreciating the loved ones, and maybe not be so arrogant about those things because I feel like he's a bit nicer at the end. I don't think he was ever mean, but I just feel like he's a bit more approachable. Maybe that's what I'll say about the Fox.
Yeah,
Nice.
No, absolutely. I agree with you guys. I think another good one is just because like his wife puts on so much emphasis of like being honest with her, and he's like implying that like he is, but he's clearly not, or like maybe like a lie of omission of like he's not really telling the full truth, which is still a lie, especially if like that's his wife. Like he should definitely be very transparent with her. And then like that's come up a few times where like I think it's even when they are kind of forced to go underground and he's just like really frustrated with like the decisions that he's made. It's like, why didn't I do this? And then she's just calling him out. Like it's because you don't like listen to anyone. Like you just listen to yourself. And yeah, definitely I don't know. The deep life lesson. I agree with what you guys said already of just being happy with what you have, and maybe just taking it a little bit slower, like he was really chasing that rush where he was at a point where they had like all the chickens they really like wanted. Like Kylie was even calling him out. Like, I thought you said it was just this one thing, but you can tell that he's getting that rush. So like Taylor, you mentioned like the midlife crisis thing. Like I definitely believe that because he had been out of the game for so long, but it seemed like he was just needing something further to get him jacked up on something again. That adrenaline of crime.
Nice. Great. I love it, guys.
Great. I really wanted to shout out to the song that they kept playing regarding the triple Bs. That was so fun. Like the kids chant, and then like in like the end like climax when they're like on the compound and just things are going crazy. Like the Raby dog comes out, and then it's just that song is like playing in the background, and it just had this like really, really it just brought a really interesting like tone to that scene because it's a very chaotic scene, but you just have these like children chanting. Like it felt eerie even to an extent. Like I could even maybe compare it to a very minor degree of like the Nightmare on Elm Street chant of like the
1,
kids.
2, Freddy's coming for you.
Yeah,
3,
like
4.
like that's what it reminded me of, just like
Yeah.
the school children like chanting together. Obviously this isn't nearly as terrifying as what that one was, and the inclusion of where that was used in that movie, but still, I love that it just kept occurring because they mentioned it that like the kids have this song for them, and then they just kept playing it throughout the film. That was great.
I hit all my notes. I just did a double check. I'd showed them out at some point, or someone else had brought them up. Taylor, you got anything? Shout out before we give our final thoughts. And
I've shouted.
you shouted. Well,
Shouted to win.
shout even more your final thoughts, and if you want to give a rating, what you would be slapping it on this.
I'm gonna slap a good. I actually really, really enjoyed this. I'd put a 10 out of 10 on this. I can't see like any issues with it. I love that the stop motion. I love the comedic parts. It was spliced up really, really well between unexpected moments, humorous moments, serious emotional moments too. And I'm mad and kicking myself I didn't watch this sooner. I think that if you haven't seen this movie, you should. And if you have seen this movie, watch it again because I know I'm going to. And yeah, I got no complaints. It was a good time.
Taylor, I'm sorry, did you say that you watched Isle of Dogs, or you hadn't?
I hadn't.
Check that one out too. That one's really great. Again, Wes Anderson, so like the comedy is definitely there. And yeah,
Is
like
this
dogs.
his only like stop motion movie he's done?
Isle of Dogs is the same. It's stop
Oh, it's the stop motion
Yeah.
as well? Oh,
I feel like I'm
okay.
talking to Kylie right now. No, I'm kidding.
I was gonna say
I totally missed that. Like you guys, if
he
you guys said
recommends
stop
it
motion
after
as
you're
well.
done. After you're done,
Recommends it. No, but I didn't know it was
on
stop
Disney
motion as
Plus.
well.
It is stop motion. That was the big deal. He was coming back, and it was good. I don't think it's not near the level of this one, but it was a big deal of him coming back, and I imagine he'll probably do it one more time. So
With Adam Driver.
Adam Driver, yeah.
Adam Driver, yeah, can't wait. Playing on a hawk or something like that. I'll go because I'm not sure these guys could be behind me. I'm gonna go 9 out of 10. I've always said this where critically, I don't think there's actually anything I could give this as a docking point. It's just my score is always my enjoyment. And there, like I said, there's times where if I'm not into Wes Anderson's style, I might not as enjoy it as much. This is one that I do enjoy more than other ones of his, so that's where I am. A 9 out of 10. Good old 90%. That's where little Travis Snell is.
Well, Travis Snell. I'll go next. Yeah, in my eyes, I think this is a perfect film. So I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. As I
Beautiful.
stated in my overall thoughts, like I just couldn't really look away in this movie. Like I was completely engaged. It's an hour 28, and it just really zoomed by. I was totally engaged on it. I think like the overall story is. It's simple enough to not like overcomplicate things, but there's still some like twists and turns that can kind of catch you off guard. But no, like the voice acting was phenomenal in it, and just like again like the actual like the effort that went into it, I can just appreciate that on its own. But then like just the movie is just so enjoyable, and the story is so enjoyable. So yeah, I think this is a perfect movie. This is a 10 out of 10 for me, for sure. Thank you so much, Josh Wright. I have to. Shay even said, she's like, your patron they've been picking some good movies lately, because she was there for Color Out of Space, and man, I thought I think our relationship was at a rocky spot on that movie.
That's a mean thing to put on Patron. Who's picking some sort
Dylan, have you ever seen Eyes Wide Shut?
of Eyes Wide Shut. Never heard of it. What's
You
that
should
one
watch it
about?
with Muds. Just watch it with Muds, and then
Or just come over. I usually watch it with friends. It's a good Christmas
another
movie.
bad experience Kirklin had with a Patreon
Okay.
movie. I think it was.
Sounds good. I will not watch that one then.
Yeah.
It was great.
My
got some
eyes
deep
will be wide
meanings.
shut on that one.
It does have some deep meanings. It's
Oh, I love a good
movie.
deep meaning when I
Yeah.
can pick
Appreciate
up
what
on
you got. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, but appreciate what you
Basically,
got.
like Mr. Fantastic
It is actually
Fox.
like Mr. Fox, just with
Oh
sex.
my god,
yeah.
we found it.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
original
With
Mr.
sex.
Fox.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I have anything else to add. This movie is a complete delight. I think this one is one I'll be rewatching pretty often. And now I'm going to be a Wes Anderson head. I'm going to go ahead and watch some more of these films. So there you go. Thank you again for the recommendation. This was a lot of fun. So there you go.
Well, there we go. Yes, again, a big thank you to Joshua Wright. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to review this movie, and thank you for supporting the network like you have been for the past little bit. So we do appreciate it. We hope you appreciate this review, and until next time, not be boring.
Bye-bye.
Peace.